Welcome back to I Want That Too, the podcast where Disney merch meets Disney history. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and as always, I'm joined by the lovely Lauren Hersey on the Sunday after the 4th of July, 2026. So, we had a good time, yes?
Yeah, had a great time. Very festive, busy weekend. But everybody has all their fingers and limbs. Did we hear the ghost train, Jim?
Oh, yes, we did. From bed. I literally, at 15 minutes to midnight, I get in our car, I drive to the end of our driveway, I park there in the dark, and Lord, I'm there practicing with my camera so I can take video of it and I can record so I have something to share with you and we can in turn share, with our listeners. And at 2:15 in the morning, I finally, after I was being consumed by every mosquito in the Northeast, it's like, all right, that's it. I don't understand, because years previous, the ghost train has rolled by our house between, midnight and 1. And it's just sort of like, what's going on? Where is he? The ghost is late. So I drive the car up the driveway, and I'm disappointed, and I go to bed, and at 4:30, Nancy shakes me in bed, and it's the ghost train! And sure enough, it's driving by on the road, and at 4:30 in the morning, he's never come that late before. So, I apologize, folks. I promised you audio and video, and I will try again, in 2027, but the ghost is screwing with me. That there's just no other way to say this, Lauren. But anyway, so let's put 4th of July for 2026, the 250th anniversary of the launch of our nation in the review. And for this week's show, we've moved on holiday-wise. We're going to be talking about Halloween of this year, right?
Yes, we're talking about not only the merch that dropped, but how it is arriving earlier than ever this year. And we're also getting, which I think is maybe a little bit of a late first look at the latest D23 merch, and it's exciting. And looking at a new souvenir at Disney Springs that raises an interesting question. What were some of the most collectible pieces of Disney merch from the 90s? The answer may not be what you think, sir. And then in today's feature, Jim is going to tell us about how Disney Resort changed Walt Disney World's future forever and why it had almost nothing to do with the hotel itself. But before we get into today's show, what do we thank our sponsor?
That we will, who, of course, is unlockmagic.com. And before you book your next Disney or Universal vacation, do yourself a favor and go check out unlockmagic.com. They're powered by the same trusted team behind the DVC rental store and have helped guests save more than $20 million on theme park tickets. So visit unlockmagic.com before you book and make your next upcoming trip to Central Florida just a little bit more magical. And okay, so speaking of trips, Lauren and Eric and I are headed to Southern California in is this correct, really? 37 days?
37 days from the day this podcast drops, we will be at D23, the ultimate fan event.
Wow.
And,
okay.
We're just going to D23. And going back to unlockmagic.com, if you are heading out to D23 as well, they also do Disneyland tickets, that's where we'll be getting ours. But this week, we got the first official preview of the exclusive merch coming to the event. And people are excited. So I saw an article that was posted, and so I started doing some digging, and I found this fellow on Instagram. I believe his handle is Fatty Bears with an S. If you want to actually see the merch, he did a really good job. So they must have invited some influencers out in Southern California to go through some of the new merch that was coming. And at first, when I saw what was being dropped, I was kind of like, But after watching Fatty Bear, if that is his name, I was impressed. So not only did they have, the big brand names like Loungefly and Lug, Spirit Jersey, Nike, Lululemon, all of those, they actually have a whole D23 boutique that's coming this year. As a reminder, back in 2024, I was so disappointed because you really couldn't get much that actually said the D23 Ultimate Fan event. And I think they have learned their lesson. They are on top of it. And we are getting a lot of D23 specific branded merch. So, Jim, you're looking at some photos of screenshots I copied from Fatty Bears. But some interesting things are, I am assuming as a man, Jim, maybe you tell me, have you ever spotted a pair of Mickey or Minnie ears that you really wanted and you're like, damn, it has a bow?
It's about Mickey ears. What's interesting is I can look into our kitchen right now, and I see a set of the gold Mickey Mouse ears that they did for Disneyland's 50th. That's actually right next to the Nog plush that our pal was so kind to get for me, while she was still at the company. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And I want to say I got those, the ears anyway, at the Disney outlet store we used to have at the New Hampshire Mall. It was always interesting to go in there and purchase things that, had started off life in Anaheim. And it's like, how did you make your way to New Hampshire? It's like, shut up and buy me. So.
They must have had a lot of excess. They're just going everywhere. But anyways, so I don't know if what's happening is they're going to test some things at the expo and see how it goes. And then we'll maybe see them rolled out at the parks. But they have several pairs of ears. Every pair that I saw has a removable bow now. So that male, female, anybody can wear the ears. So ones that I'm looking at are the Sorcerer Mickey branding is coming back for the expo, and this one had a red bow. But there was also like a blue version with stars and moons and stars on the bow, which is also removable. And so for our collector friends, I thought that it was interesting that they have a line celebrating WED Enterprises. So that was the original Walt Disney Imagineering. That seems to be getting a lot of excitement online. Isn't that kind of cool?
They are. I mean, I'm having trouble recognizing the Mickey that's on the WED Enterprise stuff. I don't recognize him. He looks old
and short and kind of chubby.
Well, so am I. Maybe that's it. I'm not recognizing what I see in the mirror. Further on down the list here, though, we've gone from WED to stuff from model after items found in Walt's office. Is that right?
Yes. So this is what everybody that, tracking online was really excited about. And you could kind of see there that the line is actually called like Walt's office. And the coolest item in this collection, I think, is that satchel that you're looking at. And I guess it is modeled off of the satchel that he actually used and carried daily. Now, there is a tag on this that says like Walt's office. So he probably wasn't rocking that. But very, very cool. And speaking of Walt, as a part of this collection, there is also the Walt's chili. It looked maybe like a bank. And then there's a shirt that says Walt's chili. And then the recipe is on the back. So very cool, very clever. Some something else this time around that I do not remember seeing in 2024 is there's a Honda specific collection. So if you were lucky enough to score tickets to the Honda Center, there is a small line, that includes pins, the ears with a removable bow, a T-shirt to commemorate that experience, and you can only get those if you have, tickets for the Honda Center. What do you think about that, Jim?
God, they don't miss a trick. By the way, just to double back to the Walt's satchel thing, it's worth noting, I don't know if you remember from the D23 that you guys went to, was that the one where they had, Air Force One or Mickey One, the corporate plane on display?
Yeah, with all the vehicles and everything.
And what was interesting about that is that one of the hottest items at the last D23 was a duplicate of the bag that you got if you were ever lucky enough to fly on the Disney corporate plane. And, Nancy was quick to chase after one of those. We have it here at the house, and the cats have no respect whatsoever for this thing. They sleep on it and cover it with cat hair. So it's like, that's a collectible. Get off of that.
Yeah. So the internet is the folks that have been to an expo in the past are giving newcomers a little bit of a warning to say it's not about picking what you want to shop for when you get there. It is getting the access to be able to buy it before it sells out. And I know we've mentioned this before, but in 2024, you had to get a virtual queue for shopping there. And we were waking up in the middle of the night and trying to secure the virtual queues. And we failed every time. Now, thankfully, like Mickey's of Glendale, which was the Imagineering store, they did let the poor suckers in eventually, just by standing in line. So Disney hasn't come out and officially said yet what the shopping protocol is going to be, but they did confirm that the details for the virtual queues are still to come. So I'm hoping that maybe it's a little bit better, or maybe they're not going to let so many people in before the expo opens, and then it's slim pickings when we get there. But I guess we shall see.
Yeah, I mean, they've been doing this event now since 2009. And I mean this in the kindest possible way, because I do enjoy a lot of what the D23 Expo is, but it is a continual area of frustration, the fact that this is Disney. And literally there's Disneyland, a half a mile away from the Anaheim Convention Center, which is really good at, people in line and managing crowds. And it's like, how is it that, you've been running that place for 71 years, and and yet you're so bad at handling crowds and moving people around in the Anaheim Convention Center. I mean, it's just, you would think, given that they've been doing these every 2 years, in 2009 they would have their act together, but no. The official Disney fan club, just not as good as handling crowds as I think they should be at this point.
But I will tell you that from a merch perspective, hands down, this is so much better than what we saw, at least in 2024. And I don't know what it looked like, all the way back to 2009.
Okay.
But we got to look at the bright side here. Now, if we'll be able to get it, that's still to be decided.
This is why Lauren and I do this show together. Good cop, really crabby cop.
Well, speaking of being crabby, what do you think about Halloween merch dropping in July, Jim?
Well, thinking that, speaking of which, we are, 37 days out from the D23 Expo, and I want to say, isn't the first Mickey's Not So Scary in August out ahead of that? So, I guess if you're going to be dressed properly for this event, the merch should drop early. What are we seeing?
Yeah, so it was just this week we saw the first drop at Walt Disney World. And I don't know if this is everything that we're going to see. They call it like summer weed. But the thing that people are most excited about is the Headless Horseman items. That's the chatter online. So we're looking at apparel and accessories. So what we're looking at here looks to be like a quarter zip with the Headless Horseman on the back side, and it's like a purple or blue, and it has the flaming pumpkin with the Walt Disney World like watermark on the front, and then there is also a t-shirt, since it's going to be 95 degrees or 100 degrees for these first parties. So this shirt is heather gray, looks like it would be pretty soft. And then it has the Headless Horseman is more of like a cartoon and a very, very concerned looking Mickey.
Yeah, I have to admit that one looks fun, and more to the point, that looks like something you could wear at a Halloween event in August. So yeah, I'm behind that one.
Is that the new Mickey from the new cartoons?
I want to say,
or the very, very old Mickey. It's in black and white. I can't tell.
Is it Paul Felix, the gentleman who did the Mickey shorts that for the Disney Channel and Disney Plus, the ones that were so funny? That seems to be that stylization of the character back, rather than the he's not the corporate symbol, hit that one clearly.
No. But I'm not necessarily a Headless Horseman kind of gal. I appreciate the work that he does, but I am a Cutie Ghost kind of gal. And it looks like Cutie Ghost is coming back this year, and there is a pullover for $49.99. And I would say that it's like maybe a boy ghost. I don't know. But he's sporting his Mickey ear hat and has a latte and maybe a crossbody. So I think the millennial gals out there might really like Cutie Ghost. And I had to include this because I thought this was so weird. So I get it. They're going to have the villains. Obviously, it is Halloween. But there is a shirt that is representing the Evil Queen, Hades, and Maleficent. But they're all represented as beverages. Like glasses.
Yeah, I'm looking at that now, and that, sometimes I stand outside of Disney's merchandise choices and are like, okay, but at the same time, I wonder, from a hidden agenda point of view, I mean, face it, we are, 3 years out at this point from Villains Land at the Magic Kingdom, and maybe, some of the stuff we're looking at in this year's Mickey's Not So Scary merchandise drop are things that potentially we will see somewhere else in the park in a couple of years. So
perhaps. So if you're a collector of things, maybe you should grab one and we'll do a comparison. But anyway, so when I saw the first line of merch dropping at the parks, I was like, oh my gosh, I know that they're starting the parties earlier this year, but it still feels very early. So I did some digging to look at the timeline, the comparison. So we just talked about, it's the 5th of July right now when we're recording this. But in 2025, July 7th is when we got the first look of at the Disney store, and they rolled out like their Haunted Mansion collection. And then July 24th is when we got the Disney Parks blog, and that was the first look at what was going to be coming to the park. August 5th is when Disney published their first merch merch guide for Halloween. And then somewhere between the 4th and the 5th is when the merch actually appeared in the parks. So remember those dates, because now we're fast forward to 2026, and we got the first look in April 28th this year of the sneak peek of the Halloween merch. And then it actually dropped, this week. And then August 7th is the first not so scary Halloween party. So I went to the interwebs to see what the internet thinks, and everybody does notice that this feels earlier, but everybody just seems excited about what they rolled out. They must have hit the nail on the head, and I think this is just now the cycle. And we wouldn't be having Halloween parties on August 7th if it weren't selling, right?
Oh, no. If there weren't demand. I mean, I think we talked on just the last show about, if we go the other end of the spectrum, the notion that if you look at the fact that this year for Jollywood Nights, for the first time ever, we have 2 dates for that holiday event in early January. What is it, the 5th and the 7th, I want to say? So, and Disney would not have put those tickets out there if there wasn't, a very strong suspicion on the on the behalf of the folks who run the resort that, like, there's demand. There's people who come for the tail end of the holiday season, and more to the point, that's also at Hollywood Studios, where we'll have just opened our Magic of Disney animation thing, and the Muppets Rock and Roller Coaster will still be relatively new at that point. And it's like, I'm betting we can still sell tickets to an after-hours party in January. So I'm not honestly surprised to see, Disney exploring both ends of the holiday season, especially, with that notion of April 28th for the sneak peek of the merch.
Yeah, I mean, that's very early. But they know what they're doing. Or, I mean, maybe they do and they don't. I don't know. We talk about nostalgia all the time on this show, and that, people, especially what some would say Disney adults, we like to relive our childhood. It was a simpler time, in those days. And so we're seeing a lot of those things come back again. And one of the things that I saw this last week that had me excited was that Disney is bringing back the windbreakers from the 90s, like 94-ish. What do you think of the windbreakers, Jim? They popped up at Disney Springs at the World of Disney.
Yeah, these are very much that 90s color palette. Holy cow. Okay. And, I guess the only downside of these is that, it used to be when you had a friend who had a retro windbreaker like this, you could pick them out of a crowd. And now it's like, oh, Disney's going to be selling these. So, I'm going to have to check to see if it actually is my friend in the, that's the Mickey colors, isn't it? The red, the yellow, the black, right? And
yeah, we got Mickey and Daisy, which I'm assuming this will be like
Daisy.
A first.
There we go.
Maybe like a first run and see if they sell. But I would assume that they'll be at least somewhat popular, because Disney is not the first to this game. Universal Orlando, and I believe Universal Hollywood, they've been selling these windbreakers for quite some time. I mean, my husband actually owns one. He thought it was the coolest thing. Now, the one from Universal Orlando, I mean, it really... You would be able to pick him out in a crowd.
I'm an Eric Hersey fan. I would be able to pick him out of a crowd anyway. But yeah, if he's wearing a Mickey red, black, and yellow thing, yeah, makes it that much easier.
All right. Well, but it got me thinking about Disney collectibles from the 90s. And you were all over the parks in the 90s, right? What big collectibles or merch do you remember?
Well, I mean, face it. What was interesting is a lot of people associate pin trading with the '90s. It did get started in the late '90s. I mean, there's the famous story of the guy from Disney Merch going to an Olympics event and watching the athletes there trading pins among themselves, and it's like, ooh, I can do something with that. But yeah, collectibles in the '90s. What have you managed to chase down, Lauren?
Well, unfortunately, I don't personally remember a ton. I did see about the pins, and like it's kind of like a before pins and after pins. Like before pins, people bought a trip souvenir. After pins, they started to collect. And I wanted to ask you about these Disney bean bags that were from '97 to 2000, and I'm assuming that this was during the time of the Beanie Baby craze and maybe the start of eBay. Like, do you remember these?
Well, I mean, some of the Disney bean bag tier thing. I mean, the weird part of that is that '70s retro. I mean, it's just sort of the notion of, hey, remember these? And now we're doing them. So they're character themed. So there'd be, I want to say Mickey and Winnie the Pooh. And, I remember going into Art of Disney and seeing a bunch of these on display. And it's like, I would make people on the plane so angry if I bought one of those and then tried to stuff it in the overhead. Just sort of like, no, we're not taking that home. On the other hand, I did for a time collect Disney animation cells, and those were popular in the '90s as well, right?
But not for the everyman. Isn't that more like we're collectors, or did everybody buy them?
Well, I mean, it's worth noting that Disney would do what they referred to as Sira cells, and these would be like memorable scenes from the movie, with a faux cell in the front and a background, and but they told you up front, not the real cell. But it was lovely to hang on the wall. On the other hand, if you wanted a real cell, I want to say Sotheby's would do actual auctions. In fact, what's kind of interesting is these days you can go on eBay and chase down the actual auction catalogs, and I have a bunch of them here at the house for like Roger Rabbit and The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, and some of the original cells from those films went for ridiculous amounts of money, Lauren. Sadly, with the rise of computer animation, it's interesting. The market for classic hand-drawn animation cells has softened somewhat.
You would think that it would be on the rise because it would be more rare.
It would, you would think that, but again, it's sort of like. What was a friend of Nancy's, Roseanne, just recently was talking about the fact that, she has, for example, she inherited from her mom all of this lovely antique furniture and all of this, amazing, porcelain plates and that sort of thing that they only use for holiday meals. And, and she's looking at her own grandchildren who have absolutely no interest in this. It's just sort of like, Grandma, this is nice. I don't want it. And that's the weird thing about just jumping back to hand-drawn animation cells. There's a whole generation of kids where it's like, my favorite animated characters are Buzz and Woody, and they're not painted on a piece of acetate. They're here in my laptop or here in my phone or in my local multiplex. Toy Story 5, now playing at a theater near you.
Yes. And I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, you have to have the demand to be able to charge for some of that. And, times are changing. But I'm wondering if the most popular collectible from the 90s wasn't actually a collectible at all. Like, I know from all the photos and seeing what's on eBay, I think it was probably the park apparel. You wanted to buy something to symbolize your trip, that you were there. We talked about those 94 windbreakers. I did see some on eBay this week. They were not going for hundreds of dollars. They were, pretty reasonable. But other popular ones were EPCOT Center jackets. Lots of the denim jackets making a appearance on this list. But I don't think that people bought them because they ever thought that they were going to be valuable. But now, these younger generations, it is something that they think is cool, and it is retro, and they're going thrifting and looking for this kind of stuff. And I'm assuming that's why the, Disney windbreakers are making a comeback.
That could well be. And, and the weird thing is that so often the really rare collectibles are for things that didn't necessarily succeed. I mean, for example, there is a denim jacket for the Light Magic Parade at Disneyland that, was supposed to be the original replacement for the Main Street Electrical Parade, announced with great ceremony in 96, opened in 97, only ran for the one summer, Lauren. And but these days, people pay top dollar for the denim jacket that was created for the inaugural season of Light Magic, because get this, it had fiber optics built into the back of it. So,
what?
Mind you had to carry a battery pack with you, but
no big deal. What if you get it stained up and you'd wash it?
There we go.
Yeah, but something that, Eric bought on our last trip that I think I showed you photos of because I thought it was so ridiculous. Remember, Eric was going down to take his brother to the parks, who is not a Disney person, very much a Star Wars person. And so he was down there for a work conference. And so this was just a quick in and out trip. So we were staying at All Star Music, I think. And Eric spotted an All Star shirt, a resort shirt, and he was thrilled, and he bought it, and he absolutely loves it and wears it everywhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just proof that a Grand Floridian girl can marry an All-Stars boy and live a happy life. But anyway, it got us thinking, how did this even become a thing? And who besides my husband is rocking an All-Star resort shirt?
Well, now, speaking of the All-Star, when we get back from this break, we're going to take a look at, when the Disney World Resort built its first moderates and value resorts. But before we do that, there's this.
Honey, what are you listening to?
Mom!
Your teen might not share everything with you, but teens share everything with each other. And certain everyday behaviors, like sharing food, drinks, or kisses, could mean sharing bacteria that can cause meningococcal disease, known as meningitis. Although meningitis is uncommon, about 1 in 10 who develop it will die. Ask your teen's doctor about missing meningitis vaccinations. Learn more at meningitis.com. Vaccination may not protect all recipients. Sponsored by GSK.
And we're back. Okay, folks. Now, just again, if you listen to this podcast, I do what Lauren Hersey tells me. A few weeks back, she again was sharing the story about Eric and his pursuit of his All-Star shirt, and asked, well, what is the story about these hotels? Because they're an interesting part of property, and unique design, and
uniquely Michael Eisner, right? Eric loves it because Eisner was kind of our Walt, and that this was a product of his, right?
Yeah. In fact, let me share an interesting story to start off this feature. Okay, it's the mid-1990s. I am driving around the Caribbean Beach Resort, and I make a wrong turn. And I wind up backstage. I literally roll by a sign that says cast members only. And I'm like, oh, crud, got to turn around. So at the very, I come to a cul-de-sac and I'm turning around but I stop the car for a moment because it's like, what am I looking at here? Because it's a tiny little building, but it's got a giant maraca, positioned against a wall and on the roof. And it's like, well, what is this? And as it turns out, and again, this is a Michael Eisner specific story. Michael, when the company was building brand new hotels, it's just like, it was one thing, you could bring him the art, you could show him the model, and he's like, that's nice. I still want to see the room. Build the room. And so what this was backstage at the Caribbean Beach Resort was the model room for the All-Star Music. And the giant maraca was the thing that they did on the outside of the building.
Are you saying that the All-Stars came after Caribbean Beach?
Oh, yeah, very much so. I mean, we didn't get our first value resort to almost 94? And our first moderate doesn't open until 88. But anyway, here's the thing. Michael would actually insist, build the room. I want to be able to walk through the room. And not only that, I may want to sleep in the room to try it out. And, and this was the thing when I told the story to a friend at Disney about, accidentally driving backstage at Caribbean Beach. She's like, oh, geez, you are so lucky. Because if you had made the mistake of driving back there when Michael was in the room, Disney security would have fallen on you like wolves.
I bet.
The guys would have climbed out of the black SUV. And what was the old David Letterman joke? Men dressed in mouse suits will beat you senseless. So, but anyway, let's talk about how we actually got our moderate and valley resort. And Lauren, this dates back to January of 1985. Michael Eisner has been on the job for maybe 4 months at this point, and they hold a design charrette down in Florida. And in fact, what's kind of interesting is, and we know about this because Harrison Buzz Price was part of this, and in his personal papers, which again you can view over at the University of Central Florida, there's an agenda for this thing. And as part of the agenda, they talk about, okay, we're looking to build our first moderate resorts, our first DVC, our first timeshare, and our first standalone water park, Typhoon Lagoon. And what's interesting about this, Lauren, is this is a departure from the way Disney had run its Florida resort. Prior to this, again, January of 85, Disney prided itself on being a good neighbor. I mean, the company was making so much money at the theme park and at the campground and its, a handful of on-site hotels that, the thinking was, well, it's okay if money goes outside the resort, to, for example, those chain hotels that were being built out on iDrive, or for that matter, the family-run resorts that were down in Kissimmee and St. Cloud. Well, that changes when Michael Eisner comes through the door. But more specifically, that changes when the Bass brothers, pair of Texas billionaires, become the principal shareholders of Walt Disney Company. And, they were the ones who were looking at the fact that the company, people forget that Disney had to pay Saul Steinberg $325 million in 1984 to effectively call off his attempt to break up the company. He was a green mailer. And so the Bass brothers are like, we need to get that money back. And we're going to do that by building more hotels on property. So, okay. And again, they look at, what's being built on iDrive and what's being built down at Kissimmee. And it's like, okay, so these are two different types of hotels. There's a moderate hotel and there's a value hotel. So let's start with the moderate. So June of '87, they break ground on Disney World's first on-site moderate hotel. And Lauren, by the way, they made sure that this thing was going to succeed. The way it was positioned, I mean, think about this. If you where the Caribbean Beach Resort is today, to the east is where Disney-MGM Studios was being built. The brand new third gate for the park. And by the way, that broke ground in March of '85. Directly to the north, in fact, across the street from where Caribbean Beach Resort was being built was EPCOT Center. So it's like and hey, that's the park with the restaurants that you really should go to and eat every meal. And then to the east, further on up the street on Buena Vista Drive, you have Typhoon Lagoon. And you also have Pleasure Island. So it's like Caribbean Beach Resort is across from the second gate, but it's in between, the under construction third gate, the under construction, brand new water park, and the nighttime entertainment district. So you are in the white hot center of everything that Disney is building in the late '80s. And not to say that they're neglecting the monorail area. In fact, there was an Asian-themed hotel the company was going to build in the early '70s that wound up getting canceled due to the Arab oil embargo. But they still had this chunk of real estate right at the edge of Seven Seas Lagoon, Lauren, and this is where, they built the Grand Floridian. But anyway, October of 1988. The first phase 1 of Caribbean Beach Resort opens up. And by the way, just again, give you some particulars here. It's a 200-acre complex, Lauren, built around a 45-acre lake, Barefoot Bay. And now, mind you, not everything opens at once. In fact, it's just the first 764 rooms of what will eventually be an over 2,100 room complex. But it was kind of a big deal. These were 340 square foot rooms. In fact, have you and Eric ever stayed at the Caribbean Beach Resort before? Or?
Yes, it was our first moderate, and we're actually going to dinner there next week in our upcoming trip. It's on the pass holder list at Boat Rides Dining Hall. It's very, very spread out, which is odd.
Oh, no. Absolutely. But what made it special back in the day is that when this place opened, again, October of '88, there were 3 different classes of room. There were pool view, garden view, and parking lot view. Parking lot view was $65 a night. Garden view was $75. And if you were looking at the pool, that was $85 a night. But this was like a third of what rooms at the time were going for at the Contemporary and the Poly. Okay. And even though when it opened, Lauren, this thing was the 5th largest hotel complex in the United States, it sold out like immediately. Yeah. And so the company is like, oh, okay, we made a good choice. And they finished construction of the last wing of the hotel, I want to say in April of '89, just in time for the opening of Disney-MGM. It was so popular, it was virtually impossible to get a room there for the summer of '89. And Disney decided, we need another one. So, that summer they announced we are building a second moderate, our Port Orleans hotel, which, by the way, it was an idea that the company had as far back as the late '70s. In fact, Lauren, you'll love this. In fact, you can go online if you search New Orleans Square at Walt Disney World. A bunch of artwork and preparation materials will pop up for this. This was once upon a time an expansion project for the Lake Buena Vista shopping village. I mean, the idea was that, where the faux steamboat, I guess it's...
boathouse?
Yeah. Well, no, this is the one that used to be Fulton's Crab House, and once upon a time was the Empress Lily. I mean, it was a 200-foot long recreation of a Mississippi steamboat when it first debuted back in '77. It was supposed to create a new attraction that made people go to the shopping village. Didn't work. And so, Disney's staring down the barrel of, well, what do we do now? And it's like, well, hang on. What if, we've already done New Orleans Square at Disneyland. What if we build a recreation of that right next to the steamboat? Only what we do is the first floor of all of these New Orleans Square buildings, they're just like at Disneyland. You got boutiques and got antique shops and perfumeries. But what if in the second and third stories of this building, we create a hotel? People could stay there, the first time ever. You finish your shopping and you take the bags upstairs to your room. And better yet, how about this? On the outside edge of this, we'll build an authentic Southern plantation, with magnolia trees and moss and that sort of thing. And this will be where we serve elegant Southern dining. And Disney got very, very far along with this plan. In fact, initially the plan was that as soon as EPCOT opens, we're going to turn the key on that. In fact, what's kind of interesting is Dick Nunis, the then head of, Disney Outdoor Recreation. That was what they called the division at the company that ran the theme parks back in the 70s and the 80s. But he was talking about, it's the month before EPCOT opens. He says, somebody asked, well, what are we doing after EPCOT? He said, we got New Orleans Square at Disney World. We're going to build that at the shopping village. And we got the Grand Floridian. We're going to build where we're going to put the old Asian hotel. And we got the Cypress Lodge hotel that we're going to build on the shores of Bay Lake, and that was the original name of Wilderness Lodge. But again, none of that happened, or at least not with those names. Anyway, ground breaks on the second moderate. 325 acres in '89. By the way, designed by the exact same people who did the Caribbean Beach Resort, but it's going to be bigger and have, what is it? The Port Orleans section, it's 3-story buildings that opens in May of '91, whereas the Dixie Landing section that opens in February of '92, and that's kind of more low slung. And of course, over time we have to change that name because using the name Dixie brings up certain issues in certain places. But when this is completed, Lauren, this is 3,056 hotel rooms. It's 900 more than the Caribbean Beach Resort. So Disney now has on property 5,200 moderate hotel rooms that are selling out every night. So this addresses what's going on iDrive, the chain hotels. But now Disney's like, all right, what are we doing about the family-owned places in Kissimmee and St. Cloud? And we're going to tell that part of the story in a sec. But first, this.
On July 16th, The Hawk lands on Netflix. From the mind of Will Ferrell.
Oh, mama, I'm back!
Comes a new original series.
Get ready, get ready. That's it. Did I stutter?
When an iconic pro golfer
Lonnie,
Honky!
takes one last swing at greatness,
you were a big shot golfer.
I still am a big shot golfer.
no one
Dad, I'm the honk now.
will stand in his way.
That's how it's done.
The Hawk, only on Netflix, July 16th.
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Here's a little tune to help you remember. Same drive, different day. Don't you wish you were getting away? Pack your bags and come on through. Texas, Ohio, Alaska, we're up there too. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Well, I hope you like my little song. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
And we're back. Now, we've confirmed you guys have stayed at the Caribbean Beach Resort. You're going to have dinner there.
Yeah.
You've done the All-Star as well, right?
Yes, we've stayed in them all.
Okay. Which ones have you stayed at? Music, sports, movies? Which one?
Yeah, I think we've stayed at the mall, and we've stayed at, Port Orleans, Caribbean Beach, got our beignets, French Quarter. So we're familiar.
Okay. Well, we were just talking a moment ago about, again, these things that Disney does backstage to test stuff before they bring it out on stage. So, again, we have Michael Eisner in his test room and the giant maraca. I wanted to also mention that one time I was driving backstage in the mid-1980s at EPCOT and came around a corner, and it was the side of the Mexico pavilion that was painted with these giant palm fronds. And it's like, well, what the hell is that? And it's like, oh, that's a test for the dolphin and the swan. They want to see if the paint treatment they're going to do on the outside of the building, the stylization, what that looks like full size. And so it's like, oh. Cool. But anyway, back to the early 1990s. Again, Port Orleans breaks ground in May of 91. But a month before that, Lauren, Disney World announces they're going to be building Celebration. 4,000 acres of land on the other side of 192. It's going to be a town with homes and apartments for 20,000 people, but also jobs for 15,000 people. And just so we're clear here, not what Walt was planning on doing back in the 1960s. I mean, remember, he wanted to build a city of the future. Michael Eisner, on the other way, wanted to go the other way. He wanted a modern community that was based in a small town. I mean, he didn't want you to live in Tomorrowland. He wanted you to live on Main Street, USA. But at the same time, it would be Main Street, USA, but with modern tech. Also kind of interesting, Lauren, this is the first time Disney's building stuff of size in Osceola County. Everything prior to this has been built up in Orange County. And the other thing, I know you're going to love this story, people paid top dollar to live in Celebration. It opens in the fall of 96, and I was actually a resident of the very first neighborhood there that was completed.
I did not know that, Jim.
Yeah, well, it doesn't start off as a happy story. This is when Michelle and I had separated, and she had taken Alice with her to go to Hawaii, and my friend Bill took pity on me. Bill had purchased one of the very first homes in the very first neighborhood of Celebration, and it's like, all right, come live with me for a while you figure out what you're going to do next. And here's the part of the story I think you'll find amusing, Lauren. So, again, we're the first neighborhood. And so what would happen is, every so often, I'd be working at home and I look out the window and there was a photo crew from Disney in the garden piece, sort of it was a neighborhood around an ornamental park. And we'd look out, and there was a full film crew out there with models shooting people who were supposedly living at Celebration for the ads that they used to sell the homes. And so I would step out and, stand on the porch, and watch what they were doing. And one of the PAs would come over and, politely as possible, shoo me back into the building because, sir, you're, we're trying to sell this as a place where attractive people live. And, you depressed divorcee, your sweatpants, you're bringing down the vibe, pal. Get back in the house, But anyway, all right, so you have your big bucks real estate development and Celebration, but at the same time, the company, again, has prioritized going after those family-owned hotels down at Kissimmee. So construction on the first Value Resort begins November of 92 and then continues through 93. And the All-Star Sports, first one out of the gate is 90 acres. All-Star Music is 55. And with the All-Star Movie, that'll be 62 acres. So when it's all together, it's 207 acres. And that's roughly the size of Dixie Landings, Port Orleans. And All-Star Sports is completed, up and running. Phase 1, excuse me, April of 94. And it takes till August of 94 for the final building to open, the center court section. But there's 1,920 rooms in this hotel, with 384 rooms in each section of the hotel. If we jump ahead to November of that year, that's when All-Star Music opens, with the Calypso section, the giant maraca that was on Michael's thing gets reused. And the Broadway section of that hotel opened, final piece of it, February of 95. And what's kind of interesting, Lauren, is there is a 4-year lag between when the All-Star Sports and the All-Star Music opens. We don't get All-Star Movies till, what is that? That's January of 99. And to be honest, that's because they had to throw every body they had at Animal Kingdom. I mean, a 500-acre theme park, with all sorts of backstage enclosures and that sort of thing. So, it was just a whole notion of, hang on, we'll hold off on the third Value Hotel till we get that completed. That gets done April of 1998, and they can finally then take some people off of that and finish the All-Star movies. So that opens in January of 99 with the Mighty Ducks and the 101 Dalmatians wing, and finally finishes construction of that in April of 99. And that's with the Toy Story section. And again, this does ridiculously well as well. So, Disney looks at what they did with Caribbean Beach and, then did the Port Orleans, and it's like, well, let's do that again. Let's put another value in development. So, summer of 99, again, just months after the Toy Story Hotel opened at All-Star Movies, they break ground on the Pop Century, which is supposed to originally be the classic years and the legendary years, and by the way, was going to share a back of house with Caribbean Beach. In fact, the very area I went to and saw the Michael Eisner test room and that giant maraca today is where the laundry facility is that services both the Caribbean Beach Resort and Pop Century and Art of Animation. Your nice, clean, fluffy towels come from there. But anyway, again, 5,600 rooms, supposed to be built there, value. But then, Lauren, 9/11 happens and plans change. And when we get back to next week's installment of I Want That Too, we're going to talk about how when Disney finally went back to doing that value resort, the plans changed and we began to see the rise of, the standard room and the family suites, which, again, are favorites of a lot of folks who visit the Disney World Resort.
Yeah, so leaving us on a cliffhanger, Jim. But on that note, I do think it's time to close up shop for today.
Well, again, and thank you for listening, folks. And by the way, if you want to keep up on everything happening across the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, please follow us on social.
Yes, and if you have a question or an idea for a future episode, just shoot us a message, jims@jimhillmedia.com, and I'm at laurenhersey.com. And if you are not quite ready for this Disney conversation to end, be sure that you check out Jim Hill Media on Patreon for free episodes, bonus content, and even more Disney history. But that does it for today's episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on I Want That Too.